Del Fujinaka coming at you. Cash flow conversations. Welcome and e komomai in Hawaiian, that means welcome. But here we have it again in another episode. I talked about more of a high level of your personal economic model. And what I'm all about is unbiased financial education, providing for you a new paradigm of understanding your cash flow and control of capital. Look, I tell you this right now, where we're at right now in the economic forecast and everything, it's all about your cash flow. How are you making income? And what is your control of liquidity and capital? Some guys call it dry powder. All I'm saying is what you're going to see here is a huge disconnect with what the very elite are doing versus the general public, middle class. So let's get going here. What you're seeing here is, again, different financial tanks. And I wanted to focus specifically on the 401k plan and the 7702 plan. These are just IRS codes that will cause one to think, well, how did I learn about it? In fact, in my last episode, I talked about my son. He was only like 10 years old and he saw that code 401k. Dad, what is 401k? A lot of guys hear it as 401k. And why do people put money in there? Well, I don't know. Everybody's just following. But yet, I started this with understanding that I wanted to be unbiased. I wanted to do good. I wanted to help people. But as a financial advisor, it was more financial advisor, product centric with this IRS code. And when I began to see a bigger picture of other IRS codes that's favoring the more wealthy, then I started saying, hey, wait a minute now. And so let's take a deeper dive in this. Okay, so as you can see here, last time we talked about the norm, and here's your big tank, and it's your lifetime capital potential. It's going through this pipe, and there's that copper pipe, the old tax. By the way, do you know that 2 times Supreme Court deemed income tax unconstitutional? Who's going to fight that though, right? So we got to play the game. So after you pay tax, then everybody is going after whatever their lifestyle is. So then back in the 1970s, what's crazy is a certain pipe was created. It was called qualified plan contributions. And it was supposed to be where, they could forecast, and who's they? The government. They could see that Social Security system was going broke. Basically in 2008, it was going to go broke. Medicare was going to go broke in 2015. And if it wasn't for banking velocity and refinancing, it literally would go broke. So then they took the focus towards the middle class, the responsible ones that want to take care of their financial future, and they're sacrificing. So what did they do? This pipe that they created, and it's going here, it's pre-tax dollars. So the idea is you don't have to pay taxes. You put it in this pipe and you let that investment grow in this tank. Now, what's happening in this tank? Let me show you here. As it's accumulating, there's control that's happening. But the storyline is so good. And if you look in history, whether it's a certified financial planner, a certified public accountant, these are all this narrative that are focused in on, believe it or not, 5% of the total IRS codes out there, 16,000 pages. And you look at this tank here, though, there you have the 401k storyline. You put money in, you're sacrificing, the money's locked up in there, and I can't touch that money because I don't want a penalty. Well, what if you have a crisis? Then it's 10%. But this is the mindset I want to address. You don't want to pay penalty, but the money's locked up there. And 10% penalty is just another 10% of taxation. So here you have this 401k that when you retire, and let me get my stylus here. So all this money is in here. Now you come to the point where it's distribution time. And you see that copper pipe again? It's all going to come down to where we're at in our overall economy. That's going to determine your lifestyle, because it's not what you make and gross, it's what you net. And so we see that there, that it's not only the purchasing power that's being manipulated with our dollar, kind of crazy there, but it's also too what you will net. Now, take a wild guess, and I'm going to open up this copper pipe as far as the history of taxation. Take a wild guess of where the highest tax rate was over the last 100 years. Now, as a financial advisor, I thought, wow, 55%. I'd be generous. At that time, it was 37% when I was a financial advisor at the highest tax bracket. And this is what blows many people's minds. And this is, again, the source is the irs.gov. And if you look at this chart here of the federal tax brackets, who would have thought that the highest tax bracket was 94%? And if I dial in deeper into it, it's when times of crisis and the need for cash flow that the government had to raise tax rates. So let me ask you, in a perfect world with your 401k, when you're retiring, where is it going to be? Because let me show the average. Let me show you the average of 56%. That's what the average is over the last 100 years. And I can almost see you thinking, well, here's $1 million that you sacrificed in your account balance, that you focused in on, out of sight, out of mind, though. You just kept putting away. You're max funding this 401k. And then we're supposed to be at the lower tax bracket. But what if just because there's crisis and greater bills and greater servicing of debt, we say, like in Hawaii, we all hui together, and it's a little under the average. That $1 million that you're thinking that's your nest egg, you end up, your share is 470,000, 500,000. Now, how powerful is that for you to sustain your retirement? And is this plan really what it's supposed to be for you being the beneficial and beneficiary of it? Or is it the government? And is it the investment banks who had control over all these years? So I say, wait a minute now, let's go back to this picture again. Here we have the 401k. And last time I talked about the games with the savings account, that people think their emergency fund is 100% liquid. But if their psychology is that's the emergency fund, technically it's like not liquid, because they're not going to touch it unless it's an emergency. So I want to focus in on that account, because you see, when I'm looking at what the bigger picture is, I'm looking at what the largest banks out there, from Bank of America to Citigroup, locally here in Hawaii, First Hawaiian Bank, a $22 billion market cap bank, the largest, and then Bank of Hawaii. They have something that is called a 7702 rule. And it's an IRS code that gives more tax favor, gives more velocity of money to the banks. And companies, specific companies, know how to use this tool too. So I want you to think about this tanks and your 401k as a tool and the promise that you would have when your retirement. Let me show you the difference with this 7702 plan. Do you know that the bank can take 98% of our emergency fund and go create velocity of money there and use other people's money to repay? So OPM, other people's money, you might have heard of. But here's what they're doing only with executives. And I had the privilege of going deeper and deeper dives with a couple banks in the mainland and a couple banks here in Hawaii. And bang, they're not after the type of typical life insurance plans that the general public knows about, where the life insurance agent takes the majority of the commission and creates I'll give you an example here. They're more just debt benefit. You're putting in premium and you don't even have access to the premium and the cash value. Whereas the bank owned life insurance only on their executives now, only on their executives and past executives. When they dump in certain dollar amounts, the majority of the money is liquid and you can access it from day one. Example, $100,000 at the savings account. You put $100,000 into your system and mimic what the bank-owned life insurance is, and that's the 7702 rule, you not only have a tax-free retirement growing with this, but from day one, you have access to do what? Remember this other tank? You want to borrow? Well, there's a safe tank. And what if this 7702 plan not only had compounding for the rest of your life, that whenever you want to pull out for tax-free income, you can? And what if along the way you could do what the banks do? And my final point here is this. The answer is yes. Remember this picture here? You can loan out to either yourself or other people. And I've been doing this for 10 years, creating velocity of money, creating stable wealth, going into real estate investments, and just seeing the plan work all together and not siloed like the 401k plan. So hopefully this is a quick perspective on 2 IRS codes and which one are you taking advantage of, or are you getting swayed biasly from, let's say, a financial advisor who thinks he knows all about it? I got another story about that one in another episode, but I want to stop here and soak it up for you guys. Think about this. It's a thought. Del Fujinaka signing off. Cashflow Conversations. Aloha.